What's up, moviegoers? Welcome to the Marchio podcast. I'm your host, Anthony. Friday the 13th, Part 3. Directed by Steve Miner, produced by Frank Mancuso Jr. The movie was released August 13th, 1982, has a running time of 95 minutes, had a budget of $2.2 million, and grossed $36.7 million at the box office. Now, I do want to correct a mistake I did in the Friday the 13th Part 2 episode of the Marchio podcast, where I stated that Steve Miner was a producer on Part 3. I was wrong. He's not. Frank Mancuso Jr. is. So I just want to get that out of the way and, set things straight. So this Part 3 of the Friday the 13th was billed as a 3D movie, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, the fun aspect of 3D horror movies. How interesting is that? Friday the 13th Part 3 is the third installment in the series and is set directly, maybe like the next day or 5 minutes after the events of the Friday the 13th Part 2. The plot follows a teenage girl and her friends who go on a trip at a house near Crystal Lake where Jason Voorhees, who's now wounded, has taken refuge until re-emerging for another killing spree. The interesting thing about this movie is that this is the first entry in the film series that features Jason Voorhees wearing his signature hockey mask, which has become a trademark of both the character and the franchise and the horror genre. However, this is a big however, the original story was supposed to focus on a post-traumatic Ginny Field, the character in Part 2, who began to learn self-defense and returned to college after surviving the ordeal in the previous film. Now, after finding Paul's corpse inside her dormitory, she prepares to track down Jason Voorhees and face him in one final confrontation. However, this concept was thrown out and abandoned after the actress who plays Ginny Field, Amy Steele, declined to reprise her role. So this movie was different. It was interesting and fun. We finally get to see Jason wearing his suitable hockey mask that he's known for. And this movie was much more different. The setting was much more different. And even though the first two movies felt like an independent movie, this movie felt more Hollywood. You can tell that certain things were done. The lighting was different. The music was upped, and, the budget was definitely higher. And, of course, they made their money back because, they gained it back 3-4 times that. But here's the thing. This was played off as a 3D movie, and you can actually see the 3D components in the movie if you watch it today. The conversion rate was different. It was interesting, but it wasn't as good as you'd think it would be. Now, if you didn't know, Jason's original hockey mask was molded from a 1950s Detroit Red Wings hockey mask and would become the staple for the character for the rest of the movies moving forward. Now, as I stated, the character of Ginny was supposed to appear in this movie, and basically that was her story. And one of the earlier drafts for Part 3 from the previous film, Ginny was sent to a psychiatric hospital and confined there, suffering from the events of Part 2. She eventually finds out that Jason Voorhees survived his wounds and tracks her down to the hospital, murdering the staff and other patients at the hospital. At the time, the actress turned down the role due to her involvement in other projects, resulting in significant script changes. Amy Steele, the actress, later recalled in an interview, "They really wanted me for Part 3. They didn't have a script, but they were just going to show me some sort of outline, and that was it. Then my agents got involved, and they didn't know if it was money issue or script issue, but I didn't do it," unquote. So here's the thing. If you think that, early draft sounds familiar, where Jason Voorhees comes and tracks, Ginny down at the hospital and starts murdering the staff and other patients, it's basically the concept of Halloween 2. Good thing they didn't do that, and good thing they didn't go that route, because then it would have been a copy of that movie exactly, and it wouldn't have felt interesting or different. Because, nowadays horror movies copy each other left and right or one-up the story, and it's not that good. Now, the script for Friday the 13th Part 3 called for Jason Voorhees to wear a mask to cover his face, instead of a burlap sack that he wore in Part 2. This would, as I stated before, became a big cultural hit for moviegoers. Now, for filming, Georgetown Productions, who had previously produced the first two installments of the Friday the 13th series, was initially involved in the pre-production of Part 3, agreeing with distributor Paramount Pictures to shoot the film with 3D cameras, making this the first Paramount film since 1954 to produce a movie in 3D. Paramount leased 2 3D cameras from the photography company Marx Polaroid Corporation to shoot the film. Simultaneously, Paramount was researching current 3D technology with the intention of developing a 3D lens to be owned and used exclusively only by Paramount. Here's the problem that happened with this third movie. You made it 3D. Don't make a movie 3D and think it's going to be good, especially a horror movie. Even though you're riding that crazy wave of making a horror movie 3D. It never works. The horror aspect of 3D movies also came back in the 2010s where they tried the whole thing again, but it just didn't hit its mark. If it failed in the 1980s, what makes you think it's going to be good in the 2010s? And this movie, like I said before earlier in this episode, the movie didn't do too good because of that reasoning. 3D glasses or whatever, or how the effect works, it's different. It's that whole aspect of trying to, make the audience feel better and feel good about watching a horror movie and giving them that scare and response. The movie received huge amount of negative reviews because of how the movie was filmed and how it was done and how lacking it was in story. A lot of critics have said that the introduction to the hockey mask for the Jason Voorhees character is basically what made him popular and why the movie had more sequels. There are not much memorable scenes in this movie at all. It's more so for me campy, and it's even though it still is a slasher film, this movie didn't work at all. It drove it to the force where you think that part 2 should have just ended the series, but it didn't. This movie continued on many years later. And, it was a popular film back in 1982 because, when you get 3 straight years of a same horror movie over and over again, people will go see it and people will fall in love with it. I personally didn't like this, like I stated, because I didn't find that, they didn't do anything with the Jason character. They just basically continued it from the previous movie. So basically this is a direct, straight sequel to the part 2. And even though, it says part 3, this should have just standed on its own and that was it. So let me know in the comment section below what you think about Friday the 13th Part 3 or Friday the 13th Part 3 3D. Did you enjoy this third movie in the franchise? Did you like it? And did you notice the 3D aspect and three-dimensional, scenes in the movie? And if so, did you think that it took away from your movie-going experience when you watched it? And did you feel some sort of, a revelation, so to speak, when Jason Voorhees found his hockey mask and, became the staple of American horror and cinema as we know it? Let me know in the comment section below about the questions I just asked. And be sure you stay tuned to the next episode of the Marchio podcast where I talk about Friday the 13th, the final chapter. And be sure you click that subscribe button and hit that notification bell for new videos and new podcast episodes on the Marchio Productions YouTube page. And follow Marchio Productions on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And follow me, Anthony, your host, on Instagram and Twitter at misterfilmstock, and follow the Marchio Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'll leave a link to all the social media accounts in the description box below. You can check it out and follow along. Alright everyone, that does it for today's episode. I'm your host, Anthony. Thanks for tuning in.